Hey guys, and welcome back to my CCNA 200-301 course. Patrice is here, and in this video we are going to talk about port security. Are you ready? Let's get started. If you recall from the previous videos, when a client sends its first frame, the switch learns the source MAC address and maps it into the port the frame came in on. Then it checks the destination MAC address in its MAC address table. If it knows where to send the frame, it forwards it out to the appropriate port. If not, it floods the frame to all ports in that VLAN. This learning process is automatic and based entirely on traffic flow. Now imagine someone walks into your building, unplugs an authorized device and connects their own laptop to the network. That's a serious security risk and definitely not something we want happening. So, how can we prevent unauthorized devices from accessing our switch ports? There are several layer 2 security mechanisms, and port security is one of them. It helps protect the network by restricting which devices are allowed to connect to a switch port. This is done using MAC addresses. With port security, we tell the switch which MAC address or MAC addresses are authorized on a specific switch port. If a different MAC address tries to connect, the switch detects this and takes action based on what's called the violation mode. This determines how the switch responds to the unauthorized device. Now let's see what are the available violation mode options. Basically, we have three of them. The first one is protect. If you configure your violation mode to protect and connects an unauthorized device to that switch port, switch will discard packets from that unknown MAC address, but it doesn't generate any syslog or shut the port down. If you configure your device to restrict, it will drop the packets and also sends a log message. And finally, the most severe and the default option is shutdown, and this will disable the port entirely. Alright guys, this is our today's scenario. It's pretty simple. We have a switch here and we have a PC. I just want to configure port security on one of this switch interface and then put a dummy MAC address here, and then we connect this device which has a different MAC address definitely, and then we see how port security will react. So we jump on our switch, and as the first step we go to global configuration mode and we go to our desired interface, which is gigabit 0/0. Obviously, if you want to configure multiple ports or interfaces, you have to select them all via interface range command. The command that enables port security on your interfaces is switch port security. But if I run this command now, you can see that I get an error message and it says gigabit ethernet 0/0 is a dynamic port, which means DTP is enabled on the interface, which is the default behavior. So we have to disable DTP first. And we say switch port mode access or trunk. It's up to you. Depends on where this interface needs to be connected to. And now we can run switch port security. And this time you can see that I didn't get any error messages. Now it's time to define our MAC address. So we say switch port security and then MAC address. And here we have two options. The options we want to talk about. You can see there are three, but we want to talk about two of them. The first one is sticky, and the second one is the MAC address. So if you want to define a specific MAC address, you can mention it here with this format: 4 characters, dot, second 4 characters, and etc. But sticky means that if you want to configure this for the first time and grabbing the the list of all available MAC addresses that are allowed in your network is too much for you and it's kind of impossible or it's very cumbersome, you can use this option. So what this Sticky does is, depends on the another option I'll be talking about in a second, is it depends on the number of actually devices that you want to allow on this specific interface. It trusts the first ones. So if you allow one MAC address here, it actually allows the first source MAC address that shows up on this interface. Or if you say, I want to allow 4 MAC addresses on this interface, the first 4 MAC addresses that are coming towards this interface, I mean the source MAC addresses, will be allowed automatically on this, and the switch will add them to the list of allowed MAC addresses automatically. But it's up to you. Here, I want to use a dummy MAC address, 1234, 1234, 1234. And now we'll be talking about the options or optional commands. The first one is switch port security and maximum that I just talked about it. By default, the maximum number of devices that are allowed on an interface that has the port security enabled is 1. So if you don't mention or you don't configure this port, this will allow only one MAC address or one device to be connected to this interface, but it's up to you. If you know there is more than one device that needs to be connected to this interface, you can say, for example, maximum 2, 3, 4, whatever. So this is an optional command. The other optional command is the violation command that will configure the violation mode that we talked about it in the previous slide. And as you can see, you have 3 options: protect, restrict, and shutdown. And as I mentioned before, shutdown is the default mode. So if you don't configure this command, this will be there by default. Since I'm using a community version of EVE-NG, it doesn't allow me to connect devices when they are up and running. So I have to shut the switch down and also the PC down to be able to connect them. Now I'm connecting these 2 devices from Gigabit 00, which I had the port security enabled on, and to the interface Ethernet 0 of this PC, which definitely doesn't have that dummy MAC address on it. Now I turn both devices on and I'm trying to do some communication on the PC, like ping something to send an email, send a frame. And as you can see, switch is responding and says something to us. And it says, interface, you remember about the syslog. This is the severity and this is our message. Error disabled. P-secure violation. Port security violation detected on Gigabit Ethernet 0/0. So something happened. What happened? Interface Gigabit 00 changed state to down. And so we are going to start our show commands or troubleshooting commands. The first command is show port security. This command will list all interfaces that have the port security enabled on them and other information. So on this switch, Gigabit 0/0 have the port security enabled on. What is the maximum secure addresses, the number of devices you allowed? It's 1. Currently, it's 1. How many security violations you have had on this interface? 1. So you can see that something has happened here. And what is the security action is shut down. And now if we go to show interface gig 0/0, you can see the status of this interface. Gigabit 0/0 is down. Line protocol is down. And why? Because it is error disabled. Why? Because of the port security. Another command, if you want to see if your devices or your interfaces has been error disabled for whatever reason, is show interfaces status and then error disabled. And here you can see why or what was the reason this interface has gone to error disabled mode. And it is port security violation. If your interface goes to error disabled mode for whatever reason, if you want to bring it back on, you have to manually shut it down and return it back on via no shutdown. There are some other commands that can make the switch to do this automatically, but this is out of CCNA scope. We can also customize the show port security output for a specific interface, and we can say show port security interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0. And as you can see here, port security is enabled. What is the port status? It's shut down. What is the violation mode? Because we had the violation mode as the shutdown and a breach happened, a violation happened. So switch put our interface in shutdown mode. How many the maximum MAC addresses? 1. How many MAC addresses have been seen on this interface so far? 1. How many MAC addresses configured manually? 1. How many sticky? None. And who was the last person who has been connected to this interface? What is the MAC address of the violated PC or device? And which VLAN was it connected to? And how many security violation has happened so far on this interface? And as you can see, it's 1 so far. I want to show you 2 other commands as well. But before that, I have to connect 2 other PCs to this switch and configure a static MAC address and also a legit MAC address on the switch port, so we can see the results of these 2 commands properly. So now I have 3 PCs connected. PC2, which is violated port security. PC3, which has been configured on gigabit 0/1 and it is legitimately connected to the interface. And gigabit 02 does not have port security, but I manually configured this PC's address statically in the MAC address table. So if you want to review our switch configuration, if I go to show run interface gig 0/1, you can see that I statically configured the right MAC address for my interface. And if I have a look at the global configuration mode, you can see here I statically defined the other MAC address and attached it to gigabit 0/2. So now the commands I wanted to show you, the first one is show MAC address table. You saw this command before. It shows the contents of your MAC address table. But now we want to customize it a bit. And that one is secure. Secure will list the MAC addresses that are associated with the ports that uses port security. And as you can see, only gigabit 0/1 is a secure MAC address and it's a legit MAC address. And also because we have statically defined that through port security, you can see that the type is static. But if you have a situation like this where you have configured static MAC addresses as well as port security and other solutions like NAC, which brings the similar static MAC addresses to your MAC address table, if you run show MAC address static, you can see that the other static MAC address that has been defined through configuration is also here. And it is obvious because when you configure solutions like port security or NAC, they will be added to the MAC address table as static entries. So obviously when you run show MAC address table static, you will see them as well. But if you just want to see the MAC addresses that are coming from port security and divide the static ones from port security ones, you can run this command to see which one is coming from port security. Alright guys, this was our today's video. In this video we covered port security part of exam topic 5.7, configure and verify layer 2 security features, and in the upcoming video we'll be talking about DHCP snooping and dynamic ARP inspection. I wish you enjoyed today's video and see you in the next ones.